Contingency Log Number 72. Code Name for the Emperor. There are many interpretations in fiction that try to portray what will happen to humanity in the far or near future. There are some that think positively on human achievement, often making it so they've successfully conquered space travel and are a formidable, if not overwhelming, power against any and every other civilization, likely fueled by the world's belief in the indomitable human spirit and that any human can overcome the odds through sheer force of will. But for the most part, when it comes to fictional depictions of humanity's future, the outlook is negative more often than not. One of the most common depictions of humanity is that of the robot uprising, such as what occurred during the Terminator franchise. Humanity being taken down by the very thing they had created, millions of years of development as a species, rising above all they stood in their way, only to end up creating their own downfall. It's poetic in a way. But while many stories will take place from either of the extremes, there is one in particular in which humanity is placed somewhere dead in the middle of the line. I am, of course, speaking of the story of Warhammer 40K, taking place during the 41st millennium. The Warhammer universe is one of constant struggle and death. There are no heroes, no chosen ones who will lead humanity to victory, and quite possibly, no light at the end of this never-ending tunnel of war. And this isn't a war against a single faction, but one where they are surrounded by several species of aliens which can and will unleash unimaginable horrors against all who get in their way. Giant ravenous insectoids who will consume all living organisms that they can reach, the living embodiment of plague and decay, and giant green warmongers who seem to bend reality around them just to make a bigger gun. They also happen to be Jason's favorite faction. Humanity has managed to fight against these other factions due to a variety of reasons, but there are two which I wish to highlight. The first being their, let's call it less than humane experiments they are subjected to, creating a warrior far more powerful than any normal human being can become. I don't think I need to get too into detail into what a space marine is and just what they are capable of. Perhaps someday I'll make a separate contingency for one, but for now just know that they are a fierce and often terrifying force. Never mind any of the other sub-factions that can become even more powerful. But despite all of this, one can say that none of it would be enough had humanity not had someone of whom they could put their faith in. He is the man who sits upon of the golden throne, and based on my research is quite possibly Jesus Christ, the Emperor of mankind. An immortal being born during the infancy of human existence, the Emperor of mankind has tens of thousands of years of experience, not just being there for all human achievements, but would also take an active role in helping them push for the future. He would eventually lead humanity himself, becoming the leader of the Imperium of Man. He is the one whose name is called upon when humanity charges into battle, or when they need some added inspiration to continue pushing forward. But if you believe the Space Marines to be powerful, they would only be considered ants when compared to the might of the God Emperor. To simply call him a one-man army would be a severe understatement of his abilities. Honestly, where should I start? As it seems any and everything about the Emperor has the strength to obliterate any and everyone who is not equal to himself. And that, in of itself, is not a very big list. Beginning with maybe his most iconic weapon, the Emperor's sword is a powerful relic, which constantly expels flames from its blade. The flames of this sword alone could destroy minor enemies with a simple touch, and its edge can cleave through even the mightiest of armors. But being able to cut through some of the strongest materials in the universe like a hot knife through butter is not its most impressive feat, as the sword doesn't just kill whoever is unfortunate enough to be cut down by its blade, it can also kill the very soul of its victim, stopping the rebirth process that many powerful souls can undergo should their soul re-enter the warp. But if you somehow manage to get past his sword, don't think for a moment that you'd be able to leave so much as a scratch on him without great effort. As the Emperor had donned the Terminator armor, one whose defensive capabilities would allow him to shrug off attacks that could destroy moons. Granted, that's assuming you even managed to make contact with his armor, as he is also capable of creating powerful shields of energy for added defense. And if you did manage to get close enough to him to engage in combat, you would need to consider yourself lucky, as lesser being would never get that far. The mere sight of his face being capable of driving those who lay eyes on him insane. And even if you avert your gaze, he could simply cast down his golden light, destroying your very will to fight. I could go on, list all his power, perhaps tell you of the time he threw the Void Dragon to Mars from Earth. Depending on the distance from Earth at the time, that is a distance between 50 and 200 million miles. But as of right now, those feats do not matter as they once did, and this is because of the current state of the Emperor of Mankind. As currently, he sits upon the Golden Throne, a literal husk of the man he once was. His current state happening during Horus Heresy. During this time, the Emperor would find himself in battle against one of his sons, one who had fallen to chaos, and turned his blade against his own father, forcing the Emperor to strike down his own son. But unlike any other enemy, the Emperor's love for his sons would be what held him back from fighting at his peak. This slight hesitation being enough to give Horus an opening to leave a near-fatal wound on his father, and in an attempt to save his life, his followers would bind him to the Golden Throne where he would remain to this day. At least, that was the intent. I say this because in recent time, there was a change. The Golden Throne, which had been keeping the Emperor in some semblance of life, had started to fail. This allowed the God Emperor's soul to finally leave his body and reincarnate into a new form referred to as the Star Child. As of now, it is unsure of where he is, but he'd managed to send a psionic signal which echoes across the universe, signaling that he lived once more. There are many powerful beings on my contingency, but I have to admit that the Emperor may be one who I hope the most that I never have to cross paths with. I need to tread lightly, as crossing the Emperor of Mankind would not just invoke his wrath, but that of the Imperium of Man as well. And I'd rather avoid a war, especially with a human faction that would not exist for several thousand years from now. That said, I've dealt with time travel enough to never discount the chance of meeting them by some off chance. As stated, the Emperor will hesitate if pitted against his own sons, a weakness that I could exploit if I am careful enough. For now, I need to find them, and do what I can to obtain their trust, enough so that they would at least humor the idea of what would happen should their father fall to chaos. After that is time, and there is a lot of that between then and now. As such, I am preparing a very long-term contingency, beginning with doing whatever I can to give the Imperium of Man a bigger advantage in the far future. Finally, and most importantly, I need to find the Star Child, preferably before something else can. As while he may have shown signs of still holding the same great power he'd once held, I am unsure if all his resistances had carried over as well. If nothing else, I can ensure he continues to be the beacon of hope that humanity needs. If you also have a character you wish for me to cover, or just want to support this channel, I'll have a link to my Ko-fi page. There will also be a Google Doc with the list of characters who have ever been done or already commissioned by others.